morning. It is Monday, October 26, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, the violence in Israel continues despite Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's attempts to calm tensions by providing 24-hour surveillance of the Al-Aqsa compound. Mystery surrounds the case of an Arab-Israeli citizen who paraglided across the border into Syria to reportedly join one of the rebel groups. And later on the show, something slightly lighter, Israeli photographer Dafi Haggai captures coming of age amongst Israel's beach towns in a new book that is drawing worldwide attention. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi, and we begin yet again in Israel, specifically Jerusalem today, where fresh violence flared between Israelis and Palestinians as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to install more security cameras at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in a bid to defuse tensions. In a spate of incidents in the West Bank, a Palestinian woman was shot dead yesterday while trying to stab an Israeli border police. And in two separate incidents, Palestinians stabbed and wounded Israeli men before fleeing. Meanwhile, according to Palestinian security sources, a Palestinian was seriously wounded after being shot several times by an Israeli settler while picking olives. Knife attacks, shootings, and protests have become near daily occurrences since the beginning of the month, sparking a diplomatic flurry as of late by Washington, Jerusalem, Ramallah, and Amman to try and avert what many fear is spiraling into a new Palestinian uprising. At the center of the latest unrest is the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem, which is sacred to both Muslims and Jews. Netanyahu on Saturday said Jews would continue to be allowed to visit but not pray at the compound, and agreed that 24-hour surveillance cameras could be installed at the site to reassure all sides that Israel was not breaking the status quo. Let's take a look firstly at the following report about that hope resonating across the land.
While extensive diplomatic efforts are underway to solve the surge in violence, terrorism continues to be perpetrated on the streets in broad daylight. On Sunday, multiple attacks took place, including in Gush Etzion near Jerusalem and in Hebron in the West Bank. In the first, an Israeli's car was hit with stones, forcing him out of the vehicle. He was then stabbed by one of two Palestinian assailants who were dressed as religious Jews. A few hours later, a female attacker attempted to stab Israeli border police soldiers. She was neutralized by security forces. Meanwhile, Israel and Jordan, through American mediation, have agreed on new steps to decrease tensions over the Flashpoint Temple Mount. The compound will now be monitored 24 hours a day by security cameras.
Israel welcomes increased coordination between Israeli authorities and the Jordanian Waqf, including to ensure that visitors and worshippers demonstrate restraint and respect for the sanctity of the area in accordance with their respective responsibilities. In fact, they plan to meet soon to strengthen security arrangements.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated Sunday that Israel has no interest in changing the status quo and is taking measures to restore calm.
I passed on a message in my conversations with Secretary of State John Kerry. There was no change and will be no change in the status quo. The Temple Mount will be managed as it is right now. The times for Jewish visits will remain as they were. There will be no changes. The same with prayer times for Muslims.
But the road to peace remains long and winding as disagreements were quick to rise. Netanyahu denied claims by chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry told Mahmoud Abbas that Israel agreed to freeze construction in the West Bank settlements. According to a report by the Palestinian Ma'an news agency, Erekat further revealed that the PA president made 3 demands during his meeting with Kerry in Amman Saturday. The first, international protection for Palestinians from what he described as the occupation and settlers. The second, an international inquiry into what Palestinians are describing as Israeli executions of attackers in recent weeks. And third, a new diplomatic horizon to jumpstart the long-stalled peace process. Washington's latest push to help the rival sides move forward seems to be bearing fruit, albeit small ones. But will the mediation efforts succeed to not only restore calm, but also launch a new, forward-thinking round of negotiations? As it stands, both Israeli and Palestinian leaders appear eager to restore security and hope to their people. The question remains, as always, at what cost?
Joining me in studio this morning is Channel 10's diplomatic correspondent Moav Vardi. Good morning to you. Also with us, I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Waked. Good morning to you. But first, let's go live to the West Bank. Actually, we're not going there yet. Let's start with you, Moav Vardi. I'm looking at the front page of the Israeli newspaper Haaretz this morning, stating that Netanyahu is basically examining the notion of taking away the citizenship of Palestinians of East Jerusalem. That's the headline. Spin?
I don't know, but let me question the not the logic, but the I would say the possibility that such an act could be taken into place. To deprive people from their citizenship is something that's against the law. It's against the law in Israel, it's against the international law. So it appears something that Netanyahu does in order to appease the public, to appease right-wing voters. It's not that simple to take out citizenship of a person in Israel. Or in any
this would be a bulk of people. This would be a huge amount of people.
No, he's talking about Shuafat and
refugee camps.
Yeah, and those neighborhoods who remain outside the wall or the fence. But I question it if even if it's possible to do so. It's very hard in terms of the law to do such a thing in Jerusalem or elsewhere.
Now, when we're looking at Netanyahu's moves as of late over the course of the weekend, the one thing that came out of the Kerry-Netanyahu meeting at the end of last week is that Netanyahu is going to announce webcam surveillance cams within the Al-Aqsa compound. Is that the only thing we're going to see in terms of concessions, do we think? I mean, it's not even a concession.
Yeah, first of all, it's something that Israel is happy to do so. I think the Palestinians are less happy to do so because the cameras will let Israel to project and to say to the international community, look, these young Palestinians are the provocators. They are throwing stones and Molotov cocktails on the cops. But I doubt that this can help anyhow, and I'll tell you why. Because a few years ago there was a camera installation in the Mughrabi bridge, in the Mughrabi gate, and this was something
of contention several years ago.
And this was something that the Palestinians want to see whether or not Israel building there. It's something that it's something like an evidence, whether you build or you're not built. And camera can provide the photo, and you can judge by yourself. Here, it's not a question of fact. It's a question of what you say about the fact. I mean, let's say that the cameras will capture young Palestinians throw stones on the Israeli cops.
Okay.
Then what? I mean, the Israelis will say, hey, they started, but the Palestinians say, no, they only defend themselves from the attack of the cops. So when it comes to such a volatile and such a complicated situation, I think that no cameras can, be a judge what really happened. It's not something that you have to see if something is going on or not going on. It's something that you have to...
dare I even say that I think everybody in this day and age going up even to a holy site has one of these. And those photographs and pictures are coming out immediately. And that is exactly the point of that everybody's showing their type of footage that they want to see. But before that, Ali Waked, I'm asking you, the whole notion of webcams, and I'm going to call it webcams, within the Al-Aqsa compound, is that resonating within the Palestinian community as something that's going to calm the tensions of
the old city of Jerusalem is fully and completely followed and watched by cameras. And when a Palestinian, absolutely, and when the Palestinians decide to do something, I don't think that the cameras have prevented them from doing anything, including stabbing and killing, etc. It was agreed upon between the Israelis and between the Jordanians. The Palestinians were not a real side here, so the king took into consideration what are the arguments that he, as the sovereign from the Arab Muslim side of the compound, will be obliged to face, and he will say, we are following by our cameras, the Jews are not praying. And when I'm saying so, we should take into consideration that at the background of this Jordanian warring is the fact that videos showing like the minister Uri Ariel and some of his friends are there and praying, etc. And this is a change of the status quo from an Arab Muslim Jordanian perspective, it's a change of the status quo, and the cameras from the king perspective aim to prevent from the Israeli Jewish side any attempt to try to change the status quo, like it happened in the last weeks. I heard Moab and I heard his Israeli colleagues, and they were there was a unanimity that there was no change of the status quo. The people don't go to the compound, and they don't see Jews praying there. Yes, there are tens of videos ruling on the YouTube showing Israelis, Jews praying there. Now you can always say that this is a small radical group. For those who want to use the fact that for other small radical Muslim Palestinian groups that want to use the fact that Uri Ariel and company and Glick, etc., are praying there. This is a change of the status quo. And Uri Ariel, as far as I remember, is a minister in the Israeli government. He's not someone who come from nowhere and decided to pray and to break the Israeli law or the status quo. So the king wants to guarantee that there won't be any change on the situation. Now, as the Palestinians are concerned, I don't think that they have much reasons to be satisfied, because there was nothing special in the new measures that help them, or that they can say that the last wave of violence brought something to the status quo, or a change in favor of the Palestinians, because they wanted from the very beginning to try to use this wave in order to go back to the 2000 arrangement. And in the 2000 arrangement, it depended on the generosity of the Waqf, whether Jews can or cannot be visiting the site, and at most of the cases they were not allowed to visit the site, and the Jordanian accepted only to go back to the 2003 arrangement, in which Jews can visit but cannot pray.
I just want to add one thing. I think that, I mean, cameras, video cameras, monitoring, it might be a nice to have, but it's not something that can provide a solution to the problem. What can be a solution to the problem is a very concrete and determined decision by the Prime Minister of Israel to say to every person who wants to pray there, listen, if you're going to pray there, you're going to be deprived from going there for 5 years. Right. You will not be allowed to go there. This is something that Netanyahu has not been done up until now. He say it's not allowed, he say something like that, but when Uri Ariel went up to the hill and prayed, and video himself, and documented himself praying, Netanyahu didn't sanction him in anyhow. Okay, now if the Prime Minister of Israel, if the government will say, this is the red line we are drawing now, okay?
They'll never do that under his leadership.
No, I'm not sure, because Netanyahu is not very enthusiastic on going to military operations. He's very afraid of confrontation. So if Netanyahu realizes, and I think he realized, that this point at time is very volatile, is very, very dangerous, he will do it in order to maintain the situation and to prevent from the situation to escalate.
Preventing from the situation to escalate, apropos that, because we're discussing the status quo of Jerusalem. Yesterday we saw Jerusalem fairly quiet at the end of this month. It was very bloody, but it seems like a lot of these incidents of stabbing, attempts and animosities between Israelis and Palestinians is moving back into the West Bank, if it ever ceased there. And joining us live from the West Bank is I-24 News' Mirav Savir, standing by. Yesterday, a fairly violent day yet again, but within the West Bank, and the fears of a possible third intifada still in the air.
Absolutely, yeah. That's something that's kind of become a daily feeling here, that there may be an attack at any moment, at any time. As you said, towards the beginning of this latest wave of terror, it was mostly focused on Jerusalem, and you could really feel the tension in the air. There were less people walking around. Everybody...
And I think we just lost the live from the West Bank, which we will be back immediately, though.
Yes, I want to add one point and one angle. The point is that this agreement is not taking into consideration all the components who are maneuvering and playing in the compound, the Islamic movement, Hamas, and elsewhere. This is an Israeli-Jordanian arrangement with the agreement of the Palestinian Authority. It doesn't guarantee anything of the behavior of the Islamic movement or of Hamas, for example. The second angle, I think that we should wait to see the elections in Turkey. The elections in Turkey. Turkey is sponsoring most of the operations, most of the investments of the Islamic movement in the Al-Aqsa. And if next week Recep Tayyip Erdogan party will lose, I think that this will have a huge impact and effect over the possibility and the capacity of the Islamic movement to continue sponsoring and investing in the Murabitin and in the Temple Mount in general, as it was doing until now.
But a third player that is very much heavily involved in this is still Jordan, as both of you have mentioned. The status quo maintained between Israel, Jordan, and the Palestinians at this point. I want us to go live first to a phone from Amman, Jordan, by journalist and Al Monitor contributor Aaron Magid. Aaron, good morning to you.
Good morning.
In Amman itself, if we're looking at Abdallah trying to keep himself in some ways not out of this conflict, but what is the chatter when it comes to the Jordanian administration at this point when it comes to trying to maintain the status quo? Will they join in this call of the Palestinians for international monitoring, as we've heard them do in the last several weeks?
Well, during the past few weeks, there's been very harsh rhetoric by the Jordanian government, by the Jordanian parliament, by protesters against Israel. One of those statements was by the Jordanian parliament accusing, quote unquote, the Israeli enemy of state terrorism. So this is the kind of rhetoric that's been frequently heard in Jordan. But what is surprising is yesterday, King Abdullah, for the first time in this entire conflict, actually publicly praised not only Israel, but Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying that we very much welcome Netanyahu's statements. And Foreign Minister Judah also said that Netanyahu's comments were a step in the right direction. So we see a changed rhetoric by the Jordanian government towards Israel that hasn't been seen since the beginning of this conflict.
When you're talking about Nasser Judah, the Jordanian foreign minister, and we're talking about Abdallah, we have not seen a change in their, reaction towards what's going on. Are we looking, though, at some sort of a semi-summit, at siding with the Palestinians on this account, on the Temple Mount issue?
Well, what's interesting is, as has been mentioned earlier, the messages by Jordan do not appear to have been coordinated with the Palestinian Authority and with the Palestinian leadership. Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki said that the new Jordanian American proposal that was accepted by Israel with the cameras was, quote unquote, a new trap. And Saab Erekat, another chief Palestinian official, said it was used to monitor. The cameras are used to monitor and arrest our people. So it seems to be some sort of, usually Jordan has very strong ties with the Palestinians on these issues, but there seems to be some sort of split between the Jordanian Palestinian leadership.
Not helpful to anyone at this point. Aaron Magid from Amman, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Mu'avadi, finally, I'm looking with you at Netanyahu's next steps, because if this has been contained thus far, and time will tell, we don't know if the last wave of violence has been contained, can he maintain not the status quo on the Temple Mount, but the current status quo of within his government in order to continue his administration, given the fact that, it seems to be falling apart?
Yeah, I think that politically Netanyahu is pretty safe now. The question is whether the situation on the ground will make Netanyahu almost inevitably do something, on the grand in the big picture, like something to give concessions to the Palestinians, something like going back to negotiations with the Palestinians, something to calm things down, because the stabbing that we see on the streets and the wave of terror, as we call it, is an outcome not only of the breaking the status quo and changing the status quo in Temple Mount. It's an atmosphere. It's something of a rage.
It's a culmination of years.
Yeah, of years. Desperate young Palestinians see no hope, no horizon, nothing in the horizon. And to solve this problem, the root of the wave of terror, you have to change the atmosphere. You change the atmosphere by measures like political, what we call peace process measures. Yeah, either by the little picture, the small pictures, like concessions, more building for Arab villages, more license to work in Israel. But I doubt it will be enough, and maybe Netanyahu will come to a point where he will understand that in order to change the atmosphere, he has to do something profoundly, going back to negotiations, release prisoners, something that might cause him probably problem internal politically with his coalition. Up until now, Netanyahu is not there, but if the stabbing and the wave of terror will continue,
he might not have a choice.
He might not have a choice.
And speaking of the violence continuing, I want us to go back to the West Bank where we lost Mirav Savir for a few minutes beforehand. Still in the West Bank, Mirav, just because this seems to be contained right now, and I'm watching my words I'm carefully, within the West Bank, what are we seeing there?
Well, yeah, as I said, definitely contained. Just as every day goes by, we're seeing at least one attack in the West Bank. Yesterday, here, there were two of them. One of them just about 3 kilometers down the road where a 40-year-old man was injured in the attack. And another one in an area that wasn't really highlighted until now, in Ariel, north of Jerusalem. Now, overnight, IDF sent out a message that they did capture the attacker. He had fled from the scene at the time of the attack and that he is in questioning. But as I started saying before, I don't know when I was exactly cut off, but in Jerusalem over the last couple of weeks, when that was the focal point of the attacks, you could feel the tension. It was palpable in the air. People were looking over their shoulder at all times to make sure no one suspicious was around them, alerting authorities at any time that they saw something, maybe even a bag that was suspicious, not only people themselves. But here at this junction, at the Gush Etzion junction, it seems as if it's somewhat business as usual. No one's letting this stop them. You can see the junction itself still very, very busy. Bus stops are packed with people, some of them still hitchhiking, and that's been something that's been somewhat of a question over the past couple of years of how safe is that and why are people continuing to do so. Now, at every one of these bus stops, there are security forces and soldiers standing by in case something does happen, because this is an area that we've seen all the different types of attacks that have happened over this past wave of terror. We're talking about Molotov cocktails, stones being thrown at cars, vehicular attacks, stabbing attacks. All of them had happened in this couple-kilometer radius that is around us. As of this morning, nothing has happened so far today, but we will continue keeping you updated if something does happen.
Mirav Savir, very, very true points that sadly violence contained within the West Bank seems to be something of a mundane thing to people who live there on both sides. Thank you for joining us this morning as we move along. Speaking of violence in the region, time to move to neighboring Syria, where Russia is getting more and more involved with the conflict, first militarily, now diplomatically, offering support not only to the anti-Assad Free Syrian army, but also to former Cold War rival the United States in fighting the Islamic State group. Both offers were rejected. Syrian rebel factions, who have been fighting the government since 2011, dismissed the idea they could cooperate with Moscow while it supports Bashar al-Assad, while the U.S. accused Russia, of course, of targeting the CIA-backed rebels more than the Islamic State. Even though the U.S. and Russia remain at odds over their objectives in Syria, officials last week signed an agreement to prevent collisions in the Syrian sky, hopefully preventing also a flurry of a Cold War yet again. Let's first take a look at the latest from Syria and break it down.
As the battle for Syria rages on, diplomatic talks continue in an effort to forge a future for a state torn apart by more than 4 years of war. A Russian parliamentary delegation was in Damascus Sunday to meet with embattled President Bashar al-Assad. Assad told the delegation he was willing to hold new elections in the country with the, quote, participation of all factors interested in Syria's prosperity, adding he would run himself if the people were not against it. Recent statements coming from the Russians have hinted that Assad is being pressured to accommodate opposition forces.
I am convinced that those successes which the Syrian army demonstrates now, with our air support, consolidate the position of the authorities, and it must make these authorities more interested in developing political processes with the participation of the opposition. And we've talked about it with Assad. Assad understands it very well.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was in Saudi Arabia over the weekend, with talks there focusing on Syria as well. The Saudis said some progress was made, but that a political solution to the crisis is still far off. Riyadh is firmly against any role for Assad in Syria's future. To this end, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia agreed to increase support for moderate rebels, like the Free Syrian Army, which has been hit hard by recent Russian airstrikes. In the past, the Kremlin has noted it is impossible to distinguish between different rebel groups from the air, and has blamed the U.S. itself for not cooperating.
The American refusal to coordinate the anti-terrorist campaign with us is a big mistake. We are seriously prepared for such a coordination. Though we are denied information on the whereabouts of terrorists according to American sources, where the patriotic opposition is located, we are ready to give air support to patriotic opposition as well, including the so-called Free Syrian Army.
While the diplomatic process inches forward, the tragedy continues to unfold for those Syrians caught in the crossfire.
Joined in studio by Elizabeth Surkoff, a researcher at the Forum for Regional Thinking. Elizabeth, good morning to you. You know, you study, you look at Syria, 4.5 years of the civil war. We're looking right now at what seems to me a new chessboard game of a Cold War transpiring in Syria between the United States and Russia, Russia taking the lead on that one, and at the end of the day, it's just more Syrians dying. But the argument of Russia that the only way to fight ISIS, to fight Daesh in Syria, is by supporting Bashar al-Assad, is resonating at all in that country?
Well, it's resonating with people who support Assad, obviously, but it doesn't resonate with the facts. The fact is that the Assad regime has been unable to capture any significant territory from ISIS. It has lost to ISIS, and it barely fought ISIS. And it still continues to focus on other opposition groups that pose a more direct threat because they are perceived as an alternative to its rule, whereas ISIS is so evil that when faced with the possibility of either Assad or ISIS, the international community chooses Assad consistently. And this is why the Syrian regime is pushing us to this situation by focusing on only Syrian groups, not ISIS. It is trying to eliminate any kind of alternative to its rule, and Russia completely follows this pattern, even by its own admission, by points on the map that it says that it bombed. It shows that only 20% of strikes were carried out in areas controlled by ISIS. Everything else, it is bombing Syrian opposition groups, including very moderate and secular ones that need to be a part of future Syria.
No, which is need to be a part of future Syria, but also I think within the ensuing situation in Syria, one can always argue it's very hard to figure out who's who on the ground in some ways. That said, going on the phone now to London, we're joined by former UK ambassador to Syria, Mr. Peter Ford. Ambassador Ford, thank you for joining us this morning. You've spent years in that country. I'm sure you're looking at what's going on right now. The Russian attempt to try and come in and supposedly, and I'm saying reportedly, not supposedly, fight ISIS. Is that something you think will yield an end to the current civil war?
I think the Russians are prioritizing, and correctly so. ISIS are present mainly in the east and northeast of the country, far from the areas which are most strategically important for the survival of the Assad government. It's therefore perfectly logical for the Russians and the Syrian army to concentrate on dealing with the immediate threat in the center of the country, where 2/3 of the population still live under government control. This is often forgotten. Right. So prioritizing is the name of the game. And let us not forget that among the so-called moderate opposition, the majority of forces there are Islamist in the sense that Hezbollah and Hamas are Islamist. Now, it's odd that the world considers these two groups extremists, but in the Syrian context, they are regarded as moderates.
No, it's a very, very valid point, and I think the culminating thought on all of this is who becomes moderate and who becomes extreme is really dependent on what big power is fighting for their agenda in that region. Sadly, all the time we have, I want to thank you very much, Ambassador Ford, and also Elizabeth Surkoff for being with me this morning. When we get back, more apropos Syria, an Israeli Arab paraglides into to supposedly join the rebels. We'll take a closer look. Morning, I-24 News Morning Edition. On this, Ruthie Sinai, what day is it?
Good Lord. 26th?
You're hired.
Okay.
So that would be I-24 News senior news editor.
Don't do that to me ever again.
I know.
God.
But got you on your toes, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm awake.
Yes, it is October 26th. Ruthie Sinai, one of the most distinguished journalists in Israel, and senior editor of I-24, one of the senior editors of I-24 News, in position for Ami Kaufman, who's on assignment in Oregon.
Eugene,
Oregon. The assignment is very important. He's visiting his grandmother. But other than that in the news, What are the headlines that are deemed worth the print this morning?
Okay. Today, Israel is marking starting the week-long commemorations on the 20th anniversary of the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. We see here a headline from Haaretz in Hebrew saying 20 years to the Rabin murder. And the archives of the IDF and of the Defense Ministry have released never-before-seen footage, or rarely seen footage, of Rabin's life, both when he was Chief of Staff during the Six-Day War in 1967, there he is,
there we go.
touring the old city of Jerusalem with Moshe Dayan next to him, the iconic,
peace,
yes, and the when they conquered East Jerusalem, which we're seeing the repercussions of to this day, and all sorts of other footage, including the moment when he was informed that he was going to receive the Nobel Peace Prize with Yasser Arafat.
This is the King of King Hussein of Jordan.
His very good friend, King Hussein of Jordan, with whom he had sort of a rare kinship. They used to like to light up together and smoke.
And a very iconic, we're looking at this, we're marking this week 21 years to the peace agreement signed between Israel and Jordan.
That's correct.
A peace that, still holds.
Absolutely, one of his hopefully enduring legacies.
No, enduring legacies, what we call cold, I call them, and you will agree with me, cold peace, so to speak.
Yeah.
But better than as one of the foreign ministers of Egypt once says, I will take a cold peace any day over a warm war.
And I want to add one thing that President Rivlin last night launched these commemorative events and said, curse my hand if it should ever sign a pardon for the evil man who murdered Yitzhak Rabin.
No, and it's interesting that the president of Israel, a position of pomp and circumstance, also, it's good that he said it, but feels the need to actually also reiterate that man who killed, who murdered Yitzhak Rabin will never be released. Yes.
Absolutely.
And
okay, we move out of Israel to Europe. We have got a headline about the EU and the Balkan leaders holding emergency talks. Again, they got together. They did agree. This came out on Al Jazeera before the agreement. The agreement calls for allowing for 100,000 more slots for Muslim migrants, mostly from the Middle East, Afghanistan, in Central Europe. However, what is interesting is also to see the repercussions of this migrant wave, which are already quite obvious. In addition to things we've seen like fences and so on
within the political ambiance of Europe.
Absolutely. Poland held elections yesterday. The party that won on a ticket of an anti-migrant ticket, clearly so, very much so, which played very much. I think we have
a report.
We have a report. Yes.
European Union leaders are set to meet in Brussels for another round of talks on means of coping with the influx of refugees. The meeting comes as more European countries opt to take a firmer hand in dealing with the migrants. On Saturday, Bulgaria, Romania, and Serbia announced they would close their borders if Germany stops accepting refugees. 3,000 people had crossed the border into Croatia overnight, facing severe weather conditions and uncertainty on how to proceed into Europe.
Over the night, we've had a lot of people coming through. In the last 24 hours, we're talking something like 6,000 people. Yes, 6,000 people, and luckily the border has been opened on and off during most of the night.
Hungary had closed its border with Croatia last week, diverting the flow of migrants to neighboring countries. The crisis has already given rise to more conservative factions throughout Europe, such as Marine Le Pen in France. Some say that the dramatic popularity of the Conservative Party in Poland is only a reflection of a trend sweeping through Europe at large.
And we're seeing the rise of the right, and I have to say, sadly not surprising, because we know that is what happens when foreigners enter Europe.
Yeah, and politics of fear always works. Okay,
yep.
We go now to the BBC, which brings us footage of a rescue attempt, a rescue of 69 Kurdish hostages held by Islamic State in northern Iraq. A successful raid.
They were wearing. The weekend also, right?
Yes, and there was an American soldier killed. This was a special commando forces.
One of the first casualties on, in
Iraq since the war,
post 2011.
And what's interesting is really the United States showing sort of for the first time its long reach vis-a-vis Islamic State, going into a prison and taking out 69 people under the noses of Islamic State.
Under the noses and special units, commando units, whatnot. Or as we said, I mean, the Americans may have left in 2011, but clearly there's still much work to be done, which they're now doing in commando units. Yes.
Yeah, which brings us to Tony Blair.
Yes.
Who said in an interview on CNN this weekend that he's sorry for the mistakes, but he's not sorry for ousting Saddam. What essentially he's saying, yes, the intelligence was wrong, and yes, we know now that Saddam Hussein did not have chemical weapons, which was sort of the cause for the for
and
Bush.
I'm looking at a headline also this morning. I think this is from the Telegraph. Actually, no, dead Iraqi soldier family say they feel revulsion at Tony Blair over apology for the war. To me, this apology, when I saw that, was extraordinary, because I think, what we're witnessing in the Middle East today, almost all of it can be trailed back to that 2003.
And he said so, by the way.
Exactly.
He said so. Islamic State, he said, is a direct result of that. But he's still saying he's not sorry for toppling him. But the reason I mentioned Trump is that Trump last night said that if Saddam was still around and Gaddafi was still around, the world would be a better place. So.
And you know what? There are those pundits who would argue that, and I'm putting aside the fact that Trump it's becoming what Americans are deeming, when is this, campaign going to be over? but in many ways, there are some in the Middle East analysts who will say that not in those words exactly, but that there's some truth to it. That you have to let the region have its own pace.
Hard to argue.
Hard target. But as we move along to examine in detail the mess in this region even more in the next segment. Moving along, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced yesterday that the government will move to revoke the citizenship of an Israeli Arab citizen who paraglided into Syria on Saturday night in an attempt to join one of the rebel groups operating in the area. The man, a 23-year-old from the Arab city of Jaljulia, in the center of the country, used a paraglider to cross the border from the Golan Heights into southern Syria, near the Jordanian border, an area that is controlled by a jihadist group called the Shuhada of Al Yarmouk. It's made up of Al-Qaeda defectors. Some say it's a sleeper cell of ISIS. No one knows, but he's there. The incident is currently being probed by Israel's Shin Bet Internal Security Agency. A gag order was placed on the investigation. Israeli Defense Minister Yalon said the desire to join terror groups was not characteristic of the Arab community as a whole, and that so far it has only been a few dozen young people inspired by online propaganda. Let's first take a look at the following report and break it down.
A 23-year-old Arab Israeli literally flew across the border from Israel into southern Syria on Saturday, a daring attempt using a paraglider. The Israeli army says he did so in order to join Islamic State fighters in Syria. The young man took off from a mountain valley near the Sea of Galilee and landed in Daraa courtside, close to the Quneitra province. The attempt shocked the young man's family and his small village.
His family is just normal family, good people. They are not extremists. But of course, the news fell on them hard. It shocked them.
The Israeli army was put on high alert and deployed special unit troops, fearing that one of its citizens had joined ISIS in Syria. The family was worried and in disbelief.
We went crazy. It was a shock for us. The young man wasn't capable of doing such things.
Rifat Saleh said that his nephew wasn't politically inclined and didn't show any signs of extremism.
It never crossed my mind that a member of our family would do such a thing. He's not even political. He doesn't even understand it. I just had a regular talk with him and told him that our job is to start a family, raise our children well, and educate them to become engineers and doctors, just as I would advise my son.
In an attempt to stop more Arab citizens from joining the Islamic State in Syria, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that his government will strip the citizenship of those joining ISIS.
Last night, an Israeli citizen crossed our border in the Golan Heights in order to join the enemy in Syria. We will act to revoke his citizenship. This is how we will act in any such incident. Whoever joins the enemy to fight against Israel will not be an Israeli citizen.
According to media sources, more than 45 Arab Israelis have joined ISIS since fighting erupted in Syria more than 4 years ago. The Islamic State recently published a video in Hebrew threatening Israel with attacks.
Let's go first straight on the phone, where we're joined by TV correspondent Hamad Awidat of Press TV, joining us from northern Israel. Mr. Awidat, good morning to you. I'm asking you, what are the details that we do know this morning about this, what seems to be quite a daring paragliding, not even attempt, success of this citizen into Syria?
There's no new details about the accident that happened here, about the Arab Israeli who crossed to Syria. But we can say that the Israeli army now, the IDF, they are more careful about this kind of accidents or this new philosophy that have been born there in Israel, especially in the Galilee and in some areas that have been controlled by the Islamic movement. That because the Islamic philosophy is very, very large there, and they are arriving here to the border, and they are looking to go there the other side to the ceasefire line and just to fight with the jihadists against the Syrian army. So the Israelis, the IDF now, I think they are more wake up for this kind of accidents, and I believe that the Shabak can do also his job.
That he can do also his job. But as you said, no more information when it comes to that incident. Ruthie Sinai, I-24 News senior news editor.
There is no more information. I am one of the journalists that I was waiting for just some information from the other side.
Right.
Some Islamic groups or someone to say that this guy, he's following to us, he's fighting with us, he arrived, something like this. But there's no messages.
But his family does seem to claim that they received a phone call from somebody with a Bedouin accent saying that he's okay.
No, there's no phone calls. There's no phone calls, and I believe that there will be more accidents like this if they didn't stop it, and they should not stop it here in the Golan Heights. They should stop it in Safnin and in Al-Faham and in some places there in the center of Israel.
Right.
The problem is not here. The problem is there in Tel Aviv.
Right. That is the time for me to turn to Ruthie Sinai, one of our news editors. A very bizarre story.
Very strange.
That many, I think, I was looking at headlines in the local media. I don't want to deem this because I think we're theorizing at the, what we're calling the escalation of the Arab-Israeli population. But we know very little about this man, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it an escalation. I mean, you've got 1.6 million Israeli Arabs. If the figures are correct, but these are Defense Ministry figures, about 45 of them having gone, attempted to go over to Islamic State, traveled to Turkey, traveled to Syria. I don't know that it's that much. I wouldn't rush to any sort of conclusion.
We wouldn't rush to conclusion. And speaking of rushing to conclusion, we are also joined on the phones very quickly by Dr. Youssef Jabreen, a member of the parliament from the Joint List Party. Dr. Jabreen, is there concern within the Israeli Arab community that this will be pinpointed as something of an attempt of them to break ranks with the country?
Well, it's not clear yet, what are the individual circumstances of each of these events. It's not clear also what happened exactly with this guy from Jaljuli. As you know, the family denied any connection to ISIS. They denied that he meant to do that. They denied that they even got a phone call. So I think there is a lot of hidden circumstances here that we are not aware of. But it's clear that we within the Arab leadership very clear. We just we deny that. We ask our youth to stay away of these terrorist groups. And I think that the Arab youth today are aware of the dangers of such behavior, and I want to hope that this guy from Jaljuli wasn't really
not an indication not an indication of something new, so to speak, within the Israeli Arab community, because God knows we don't need any more incitement. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. When we get back, something entirely different: photography, art, and something that will lift, so to speak, our spirits. First, the news. Welcome back. It's still Monday, October 26, 2015. This is still the morning edition on I-24 News. Last I checked, I'm still Yael Levi, and a good part of the show when I'm flanked by beautiful, talented women. Yes. There you go. Now that everybody's feeling embarrassed, let me introduce director and photographer Dafi Haggai. Came onto the scene last year with a book called Israeli Girls, full of hazy images. The pictures she took also sent a clear message that the teen girl experience is universal, from Israel to the US to Australia to everywhere, irrespective of if you live in a war zone. For a second project, Sunset, Dafi has changed things up by shooting girls in Israeli resort towns full of fake nostalgia. We're very happy to have with us in studio director and photographer Dafi Haggai. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Now, before we break it down and look at the inspiration behind those images, I want us to take a look at the following clip, which shows your work that's getting a lot of international traction. It feels to me, Dafi, I have to say that I'm looking at your book and I'm looking at the pictures, and they're very, remember the film Lost in Translation? Mm-hmm. There's something very lost in translation in it. You seem upset that I said that.
No, actually, I love Sofia Coppola.
Exactly. So. There's the Sofia Coppola tendency in it, which I love too. Which is, and I mean, we're looking at the pictures. I have to ask you about something. There's one here. I don't know if, if you basically, before we turn on the girls, there's this picture of this. This is the old hotel, the Red Rock, right?
Yeah.
I love you. I spent so many weeks as a kid in this hotel.
Actually, I found out that my parents were there on their honeymoon.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My father took us there many, many, many times. Nowadays, I wouldn't be caught dead in what that hotel looked like.
It's not. Actually, it's not a hotel anymore.
What is it?
It's like people who work in the club hotel.
In the club hotels, that's where they stay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's for the foreign workers, but beautiful images. When did the idea come to just do old resorts in Israel, and why?
It's kind of like a process. Like I've been starting to really become interested in beach town aesthetics over the last year. Not just Israeli beach towns, but in general, the lights and the cheesiness of touristic stuff.
Yes, the cheesiness of no, I love it. Yes, no, thank you.
The resort, luxury hotels, but also the small ones where more vintagey and kind of haven't changed since they were built.
No, and there's
the contrast.
The contrast in their look, because I'm looking at the buildings. The beautiful thing is this contrast of very 70s. Yeah. Feeling, very, very 70s feeling. And, and then, of course, I mean, you can't discard the beautiful images of females' bodies, which always sells, but done very, 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 very tastefully. And why girls? Why so many girls?
I mean, I guess I shoot mainly girls because I'm a girl. And...
Maya and I will agree.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But actually, I mean, one of the reasons that I'm doing this kind of work is just to represent the female gaze of how to shoot females.
Of how to shoot females? Why?
Yeah.
How should they be shot?
I mean, for me, I try to make it more about the stuff that matter to girls and how they feel about how they come out in images or what.
Interesting
for them.
So? And meaning what? Because we're looking at the girls, by the pool, these, the lazy, laid back, whatnot, and how
I mean, I guess for me it was just not trying to do this super sexy bikini shoot by the beach, just try to make it more my view of how this should look like.
Right. How is this doing around the world?
I guess it's doing pretty well.
Yeah. No, how so? Where's this?
This was published. The publisher for this book is Australian.
Okay.
So it was published in Australia, and we launched it in the New York Art Book Fair in September in the PS1, and it's been getting some international publicity.
And when you said that you shoot girls because you're a girl, I mean, it's not that you don't shoot men, right?
I do shoot men, but up until now, like my personal projects have focused more on girls and women, but I'm definitely like, I do want to start shooting more like male models. For sure.
To try and understand how they are beyond the sexy so-called images that we usually see them in fashion photography.
I mean, for me, when I started doing this, it was just about like my experiences, kind of. I mean, this book as well, it's all about like my nostalgia from traveling to like Eilat with my parents or
No, that's what I said. When I'm looking at
friends.
this, it's very reminiscent to me. I mean, although I think you're looking at the 80s or 90s for you, but to me it's very reminiscent of the 70s. In these little resort towns that are that weren't glitzy at the time, that weren't like big pomp and circumstance. You'd go out to the middle of the desert type thing, kind of. Yeah. Okay. So those.
So I guess it was a lot of like around my like nostalgia.
Nostalgia of that.
Yeah.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 29.
You're 29. She's a baby. Yes, thank you, Maya. No, it's okay. Maya and I are 29 and a half.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
70s, 80s.
80s, yeah. It wasn't me, it was the idea of me experiencing that. It's a fabulous book. It's called Sunset.
Yeah.
As you said, published by an Australian. Where can one get their hands on this?
Right now it's on my publisher's website. It's Perimeter Books.
Okay.
And I hope I'll be able to bring some copies to Israel in the next month or so, hopefully.
I think the people of the region would love that too, in between other things that they're doing. Duffy, thank you. You're locked in studio with us as we move to the woman that you cannot ignore. The woman that you, I wish, listen, Maya, I have to, Maya Kramer, you all know and love like me because she's our fashion contributor, fashionista, there we go. And Maya Kramer, every time you come, and I have to say, you've just raised the bar much, much higher because I don't know what you're going to do next week. But this is a fabulous dress. This is a dress that my daughter would basically, kill somebody in order to have. Terrible line to say in the Middle East.
Thanks.
But it's gorgeous, and it's twofold because it could also go black, right?
Yeah. Well,
pat yourself for a second. There you go.
Here we go.
And here we go. It's going black.
Changing
it's
the
going
color.
black. Amen. Look at that. I love this. Okay,
it's really fun.
No, it's very, very much fun, and I want you to tell me what you're here with and what is up in the world of fashion that we need to know.
Okay, so as you know, last week was Tel Aviv Fashion Week. We discussed it a little bit. Amidst the current situation, the show must go on. There were 3 full days of runway shows. Over 30 designers presented. People came from all over the world to scout new talent.
Right.
But who was a no-show? Let's talk about that.
Yes, please.
On opening night, was filled with fashionistas and local celebrities, and Shankar graduates did a runway show. Shankar is ranked 15 in the world for the best fashion school.
An amazing, a very, very prominent school in Israel, but ranked, I didn't know it was ranked that high in the world. Okay.
Albert Elbaz presented his dress, Albert Elbaz from Lanvin.
Don't worry, even I know
actress, the actress Ronit Elkabetz, you could see her dancing, in an almost see-through dress.
Yes, not almost.
Yeah. So, exactly. The only thing missing here, other than her bra, was the designer himself, Albert Elbaz. He canceled last minute. We're not quite sure why.
Okay.
Probably because of the situation.
Right. Yeah.
Even though he's a fellow Israeli.
Bingo! No, I mean, that's a thing that's quite bizarre, but, if no statement came out, I'm assuming it's also not, not to take responsibility that maybe it is a situation. But at the end of the day, Albert Elbaz, supposedly also from the city of Bat Yam. So he should be kind of aware of what goes on here. But okay.
Another no-show. Well, as you know, Bar Rafaeli closed the show that evening. But what you might not know is that it was supposed to be Naomi Campbell. Yeah.
Really?
And
that was a no-show. Yeah.
And then she canceled, and then it was supposed to be Linda Evangelist, who also canceled. So Bar did the show, closed the show. Just Bar, Raffaele.
Yeah, well, I mean, she was in town.
But can you imagine Naomi Campbell walking in this dress?
Yes, I can.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, Bar Raffaele being, again, one of the biggest and most amazing exports of the country of Israel still. You know, we're going to give her a full due. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine.
She was brave enough to be here for the show.
Yeah, there we go.
But who did come to Fashion Week? A lot of international press, bloggers, magazines from over 15 countries. We have, here we are, some of the bloggers on their phones. Merle Ginsburg, who's the senior style editor at Hollywood Reporter. She came, which is a big deal. She also played herself in RuPaul's Drag Race. Very big character, and she came to Israel for the shows, which is
it's interesting
big support.
that you mentioned bloggers, because, you know, I of the 70s generation, you know, the fashion industry, if I'm looking at, you know, even as portrayed in Pret-a-Porter, remember that film? I think bloggers, how much are they taking over the fashion scene? They are, right?
I was just reading an article about the bloggers, and that they're sort of a celebrity now. It's already like, it's a status of a Hollywood celebrity. They're getting endorsements from everywhere.
Exactly.
Millions of followers on Instagram. I read about a blogger in Japan that's huge, and she's like, her wedding costs more than Kim Kardashian's.
And their opinion is as definitive as newspapers were in the past when it comes to what trends in fashion?
Magazines.
Magazines.
Wow, that's really you're going way back.
You're very, very good. Way back.
We also had a lot of buyers from all over the world, which is really cool. We didn't have that last year from Aritzia and Macy's, big chain stores. El Italia was also here. Let's see a short Instagram that they posted on their Instagram.
On their Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look. That's...
This is Shani Zimmerman, an Israeli designer.
Right.
And they posted her show on their Instagram. That's a
huge
big
boost.
deal.
Huge boost.
Yeah,
huge boost.
Yeah.
And this is wow.
Yeah,
actually, I like
really
that stuff,
cool.
I have to say.
Beautiful stuff.
Beautiful stuff. That even, I mean, because I usually look at fashion. I mean, you are gorgeous, and I will keep sucking up to you.
Thank you.
So you can wear stuff that goes on fashion, but this is actually stuff that's short.
Wearable.
No, this is wearable. It's wearable for short.
I'd like to see you next week in one of these dresses.
Yeah.
Another show was Marcello Berlone, who came from Italy. He's an Italian designer. His line is called County of Milan, and what's interesting is he used only models of Ethiopian descent from Israel.
Oh, nice.
Now this is internationally interesting because there is a law, so quote unquote, that that designers should use a certain percentage of ethnic background, either Asian or African. Models. So he went all out and used just Ethiopian descent. He's the first designer to do that in the world.
And doing it here.
And doing it in Israel
for the first time.
Yep. So it was really cool. And his designs were beautiful as well.
And he showed up.
Yeah, and he showed up.
Let's go. Which always speaks volumes.
We were talking about the 70s. Let's go back to the future.
Please.
Okay, so Danny Barshai, who's a local designer, showed we'll probably see it in a moment. Oh, here we go. This isn't him, but this is another. This is street style. This is off the runway. There was a lot of futuristic. I have no idea what's on his head. Don't ask me. But very futuristic feel to it. Those sunglasses. Remember we discussed the sunglasses trend about 2 weeks ago? What happened in New York Fashion Week? Here we see it off the runway.
But to me this is, I'm sorry Duffy, help me out. It looks like, 3D glasses that you wear in a movie theater, right?
Yeah.
It does.
That's the inspiration.
The inspiration is 3D glasses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very cool.
I mean, very cool, but okay.
We also saw Nona, who was here last week. Gave a big show during Fashion Week off the runway. Here she is in a very futuristic look as well. Notice the fluorescent blonde wig.
Yes.
It's really cool. It would actually work really nice on you, I think. We should do that. We should try that.
I'm very good with dares. You bring me the fluorescent yellow wig, I will wear it.
Okay.
That's a
challenge accepted.
Yes, there we go.
The most memorable look, drum roll, please.
Yes.
I call it hat hair. Here we go.
Whoa!
Yep.
What is that?
This was off the runway as well. I can't reveal to you who it is because it's a secret. It is a male. Okay. And there is a hat with sunglasses on the hat.
Right.
And this is kind of like...
And that's the, okay.
I don't need, this is bizarre.
It's very bizarre.
But it's also futuristic.
Incredibly so. And it makes you wonder, you know, would people wear this in yeah.
Well, someone is wearing it off the runway. So, you know...
then it leads with that.
Nona would wear it.
Nona would wear it, that's true. And would wear it beautifully. You know, and would wear it very beautifully. Maya, always such a pleasure and a very, very light, you know, and a very colorful one at that. I can't get over. I love the skirt. I want it. That was it for us in this segment. Of course, stay with us when you get back. Something entirely different, this time sports. And of course, now the news. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I-24 News Morning Edition, the place to be, because finally men in the studio, they're all mine. What do you, what's this? You know, sort of. You're like, yes, of course I'm yours.
Sure.
That would be the gorgeous Michael Friedman, flanked by the ever-dashing... I bet nobody ever said that to you.
What?
Ever dashing.
Ever dashing.
What
is
the first for everything.
Ever dashing.
Ever dashing.
Dashing, yes, but ever dashing. That's a commitment.
It's a commitment. That's true.
Am I ready to make it? I don't know.
I don't think you're there. And that is why we're you're not. That's why we're going to turn to Michael Friedman with the sports update that we need to know. What do we need to know?
So the Premier League, we had an action-packed weekend. Right. Big derby in Manchester. It's Manchester United versus Manchester City. These two, is the 170th time these two guys faced off against one another.
170.
170.
Wow, 70. Okay, Manchester Derby.
And the two of them, they hate each other. Listen, Manchester City, they're at the top of the table.
Right.
Manchester United, they had some trouble in the past few years. But right now, things are looking better for them. But the match itself proved to be quite boring, actually. It ended up 0-0. There was barely any opportunity for goals, a few shots. The goalkeepers looked to be quite bored, actually, throughout the match. But for Manchester City, you know, they said, you know, to get a point away at Manchester United, it's a good thing. And Manchester United said, to get a point against Manchester City is also a good thing. So both teams seem somewhat satisfied, but the managers not so much. So we'll have to listen to what they said.
Let's have a listen.
And you play 90 minutes and you are concentrated, focused, like we have showed, then I'm very proud. But we are still 2 points behind, so it's disappointing.
I think that we have a good draw in a difficult stadium. I think that we play better maybe in the first half. In the second half, we lose so many balls that it was impossible to try to create chances. But as a team, if we need to defend, we can defend.
So apparently, Michael, if managers are depressed in the world of football, this is this.
They have to get lower.
They're low-sitters.
I want to tell you that if ever I do this in front of you, that means I'm not happy.
You're not happy?
So watch out. Okay, let's carry on.
So Manuel Pellegrini, he should be somewhat happy. He's still at the top of the table. They have 22 points, and just behind them is Arsenal with 22 points. But Manchester City has a better goal difference.
Okay.
But Arsenal right now, they're on fire. They're really doing well.
Always?
Not really. They haven't won the Premier League since 2004.
Okay, that's not good.
So Arsene Wenger has been around for years, and this is a team that, you know, has a lot of talent. They spent a lot of money, but they're just not yet there. Consistency, that seems to be the problem time after time with this Arsenal team. So they won yesterday, 2-1, was a great win for them, and now, you know, they're thinking, you know, they can be title contenders. Right. But we're not really sure. We'll have to see what the manager says about this one as well.
We have a manager? Okay, let's take a look at the manager. Let's see how he's sitting.
Yes, we had after a massive game like Tuesday night, it's a good test for your squad and the hunger of your players. And I feel we played with the right focus, right desire. Peter Cech had a great save with very little time to go, and that get us 3 massive points.
See, Michael, he started like this.
He started nice. He
but
started
then
with a
he went
mid-sit and
slowly.
slammed.
Because then he realized, you know, he's still a little bit behind Manchester City. He still has a lot more work to do.
Definitely. Okay. And what else?
Next we have Chelsea.
Yeah.
This next one I'd rather not talk about. It's Chelsea. They're my Blues. They're really
Look
low.
at me, I'm going low. I'm going low.
It's depressing. This is a team that were title champions last year. They won the Premier League.
And for the sake of full disclosure, I am a Chelsea Club card member holder.
is.
I am. And they
you don't know what to do with that card, but you have that card.
I have that card. Okay.
They are horrible. This is a championship team. This is the worst start to a Premier League championship side in history. This is, for me as a fan, I don't know. I don't want to wake up and watch the games.
No, life for Michael Friedman is dull, but I mean anything. I mean when it comes to that's the world's smallest violin.
I have a mid violin.
You had a mid violin, okay.
Like the Arsenal guy.
Like the Arsenal
mid-sit, mid
I'm
violin.
already down here. But looking for the future of Chelsea in this upcoming season.
It's the question is, you know, is Roman Abramovich, the owner, gonna fire the Chelsea manager? Because yet again. Jose Mourinho, he is the special one. He is what everyone thinks is like the best manager in the world.
I think that even Amit Kling knows who Jose Mourinho is.
It's true.
It's true. You see, yeah.
He's a big name,
but not delivering.
And his players aren't delivering. You know, Eden Hazard, who's a super player, he's not doing well.
Yeah.
Everyone, Matic got another red card. And this last game, Jose got sent off, so more problems. What's going to be? Will he be sacked? That remains to be the question, but it'll be a big payout if they have to sack him because the amount of money that he had.
How much money did they give him?
Too much.
Okay, that's a line.
Give me a little bit, I'll be happy.
Yeah,
you know,
but too much and not delivering.
Way too much, not delivering. So, and these players, they earn so much, and they're not scoring goals, they're not defending, so it's a problem.
It's a problem. Okay, and?
Lastly, we have Liverpool. This team is, you know, they've had their troubles as well.
But
they sacked their manager, Brendan Rodgers.
Okay. And
they brought in this new guy, Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp, he was in Germany. He was with Dortmund. He's a happy guy. Instead of calling himself,
a happy guy.
Yeah, instead of the special one, he thinks he's the normal one. He's given himself the normal one name.
Okay.
So right now, he's still looking for that first win.
Okay.
You know, for this team, they haven't won yet, but he can't. You know, you can't fault him because right now he's taking a team that was already rubbish.
So he can only go up.
He can only go
up.
And basically, for this guy, it's going to be, you can't judge him on this season, but the next couple of seasons when he brings in his players. But what he did at Borussia Dortmund in the past, you know, winning championships, it's an exciting manager. It's a good fit. And for this team, Liverpool, they have a lot of opportunities to move forward, and hopefully for them, you know, they have such a long history. They wanna be title contenders. They were so close a couple years back, and it's been a long time for them.
And then a long time, and looking at Jurgen, as we saw before, he seems happy.
He seems happy.
He's a mid to high sitter.
He's a mid to high, exactly. He's got the
He's not fully reclined.
Yeah. Or in other words, we should see if he slouches throughout the season. Throughout the season,
That's
if he slouches.
That's how we know how well the manager's performing.
It's the slouch.
The sitting manager's theory developed right here.
You heard it first. You heard it first. I'm gonna sit up straight for Amit Kling.
Oh, thank you.
He's the man, the viral spiral that is the Web Review, because Ami Kaufman is on assignment in Oregon with his grandmother.
Where there is so much to do.
A lot to do.
He's been assigned the Oregon file.
Bingo, amen. Oh, okay. Web Review, spiral viral. Yes.
Let's begin with Gawker, which reports an interesting story. James Holmes, the Aurora Theater shooter, has been assaulted in prison by an inmate.
Shocking.
But, yes.
Okay.
Not shocking, clearly. Clearly, this kind of guy who is not a career criminal entering prison, but has a mass shooting behind him.
No, I'm amazed he's still alive.
Yeah, 12 life sentences plus over 3,000 years for attempted murders.
And coming in, and everybody in the prison knows he's a mass shooter.
Exactly. This kind of guy is a prime target.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting part. The inmate who attacked him sent a letter to the Denver Post detailing the assault.
No.
Now, the Denver Post, being bummer fun killers that they are, would not release the contents of the letter, which is
wow. Yeah. I have an inclination of what was in that letter.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can say that. No.
I think you went there like,
Yeah. In short, it's let us summarize this by saying it's amazing the guy is still alive.
I only have to say one thing about that inmate. He is reported to be serving his sentence for auto theft, assault, and menacing.
Did
you know that was a thing?
That was menacing. I think the Aurora shooter is being menaced. No, wow. Okay.
We don't know what's your deal, but you're menacing. You
go. Menacing is quite an offense. And
yes, Salon is bringing a story that is just.
Wow.
Yes, it's making me very angry. Now, okay, the story itself is focusing on 1%ers.
Right.
Who are redistributing their wealth. They're, philanthropists who are not
charity.
Yes, because they are dealing with feelings of guilt, which is fine.
I was about to say, as they should.
Yeah, as they should. And what's interesting about this new wave that they're prescribing is that unlike, classic philanthropists who are choosing their causes by themselves, they are sort of outsourcing
somebody to choose the causes for them.
Yes, but people who are more, in touch with the middle to lower classes, so it's actually they're more in touch with the general public, which is also a good move. But I did not know that this is coming as backlash against wealth therapy. Have you heard about wealth therapy?
What is wealth therapy?
Wealth therapy is not when you solve your problems with money, but there's now a field called money psychology, which is therapists who are counseling rich people on how to feel not guilty about their money. That is a real thing in the world.
Yeah, no. We have to pause on this, Michael Friedman, because not only do I want your deep thoughts about that one, but this is therapy, psychological therapy.
Yeah.
There is such thing
now, again,
for people who feel guilty because they have too much money.
With footballers, all the top footballers, they're feeling very guilty with all the money they're making.
With all the money, I think Chelsea would inhabit a sanatorium. There's
the
that.
amount of money they have there.
What's amazing to me is that the Salon story is just going it's a backlash against wealth therapy, a thing we all know and have accepted as part of the normal part of life.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Okay, you're feeling guilty that you have too much money.
Yes, let's go to a therapist.
To one of the shores and give it to all the refugees who are coming from Syria and have nothing to
these guys are redistributing a small part of their wealth to their money psychology.
To the charity,
to their money psychology. These guys I have no issue with, but those guys.
Yeah, and moving along.
All right. Slate has this insane video from Boeing, who developed a metal that is 99% air.
Okay.
Let's take a look at the video.
Okay, video.
Yeah.
If you want to look at just properties in general, then one would be compression in the sense of energy absorption, and then the second would be lightweight in terms of having very hollow tubes. In the future, the material could help Boeing to save a lot of weight, make the airplanes more fuel efficient.
So cool.
You sick geek. But you're such a
You see this, you can't ignore this.
You can't. So it's metal that is much lighter, is supposed to do what? Then we can interlace and make planes out of it?
Pretty much. Not the external part, which needs to be solid, but a lot of the inner parts of the body of the airplane, which would reduce weight insanely. And of course, you can see it's supported by a dandelion puff.
Yes.
And it's not an illustration, it's the real thing.
It's the real deal.
Yeah,
How
it's sort
far
of a collapsible web. Which is probably, I don't really understand the science of it.
The planes would be faster, I would presume also.
Faster and way more fuel efficient. I think that's the big deal.
That's the big deal.
It's so way more fuel efficient, and of course, at some point when it's less expensive, cars.
Yeah. Everything will become possibly cheaper.
A lot of fuel saving.
But somehow a rich person will be able to make money out of it and then go to therapy and feel guilty.
Yes. Here's a story tailored for me personally.
Yes.
On the Daily Beast, there's a interview with Rhymefest. He's a rapper. Is pretty underground. But here's the deal: he has been co-credited as he's been credited
co-writing everything of Kanye's songs.
Not all of them, but he's been credited on some of them, including big hits like "Jesus Walks." And now he has, of course, later came out against the interview. But pretty much what he's alleging is that Kanye West did not. The interviewer asks him, "Does Kanye still write any of his raps?" And he says, "Still or ever?"
Nice. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Ghost running is a pretty big issue this year in rap.
Yeah. In other genres, we call it plagiarism. Or
that's
ghostwriting.
not exactly it.
It's not exactly. You're right.
He worked on it. He's been part of it.
He's basically the guy behind
exactly.
No, you know. He's the Wizard of Oz. But moving along, because there's one that really deals.
There's one that is I find personally offensive, but you have chose for me.
That's what we went for.
Yes. Let's just look at
Let's take a look. This is Jimmy Kimmel, ladies and gentlemen, with questions that we on daily lives here really ask ourselves: is this Hasidic or is this a hipster? Take a look.
Here we go. All right, what do you think, hipster? Most of the crowd says hipster. Let's find out.
I'm Hasidic.
All right, we're 0 for 1. Next. Now, hipster. I'm hearing mostly hipster, and the answer is...
Yep, and there we go. Okay, see, now, if you take a look at this, would you say hipster, Michael Friedman, or Hasidic?
I go with hipster.
Okay, zoom out. Zoom out, if we're zooming out, and we have Hasidic. There we go. I'm sorry, I have been thinking this.
My big question is, which one of these groups is more hated in the general public?
I would go for hipster.
I would say it's depending on the time period.
It does. It's depending on the time.
I love today.
Yeah.
You go to Brooklyn, Williamsburg. It's all hipsters.
Or Hasidics.
It's a good question, and it's the new hipster Hasidic trend. But it's all the time that we have. I-24 News Morning Edition. Do check us out: Facebook, Twitter, and all those social networks. And of course, send us your thoughts on is Amit Kling a hipster or Hasidic? We'll be giving answers tomorrow morning on the show. That's a joke. Stay with the channel for the news of the rest of the day.
Exactly.